Good afternoon. Thanks for being here this afternoon and sorry for the delay. Today we are pleased to welcome Mr. Sanjay Paul, a very special guest from ISC Bangalore. Mr. Paul is a research scholar in the Department of Interdisciplinary Center of Energy Research and Laboratory for Hypersonic Shock Wave Research, Department of Aerospace Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Previously, he has worked with Parul University and done a research project funded by RAE under the Newton Baba Fund and also published various research papers in different journals. And today he will be sharing with us his expert opinion on the application of meta model coupled with CFD. The agenda is modeling of thermodynamic system using meta model. With that, I ask that you give your full attention to Mr. Sanjay Paul and help me in the welcoming him for today's presentation. Mr. Paul, sir.
Thank you, Jitin. Sorry for the glitch. Already we have lost some amount of time. So let me begin with this. This is an application of a meta model coupled with a CFD. So this is a big picture or overview of our presentation, overview of the meta model, how it works and where is the application of this. So basically we as an engineer, we normally deal with the function y is equal to f of x, where x is our y is our dependent variable and x is the variables independent variables which we came across in our engineering applications. So let's say suppose an engine is there, so it has got a different variables upon which its efficiency depends. So you cannot play with n number of variables to get the efficiency. You have to you have to boil down to some variables on which your efficiency will be dependent. So as in that means what we have a design space. On the design space we got some amount of variables, number of variables. Say for example in this case we have taken x1 and x2. Now x1 and x2, it can be n number of combination we can take and get the experimental data out of it. Correct. Now the problem is with this is, say for example if we go for the simulation, one number of variables, one number of combination of variables, it will take you, say for example 6 hours in a cluster, and for 4 simulation it will take you 24 hours. That means if you want to vary 140 simulation or 150 simulation, it will take you roughly 1 month. So for that purpose we need to look into a picture how we can use this kind of variables to predict our response curve. So what we normally do is that we plot certain amount of data in the design of experiments. So this choosing at the points, variable points in the design space, it can be any way. Like you can plot it there are various ways, established ways to plot those points. But the point is that plotting a point is not a difficult. It's not a difficult job. You can easily plot it and getting a result out of it is a difficult thing. So what we do is we took number of points depending on our time available. Say for example, if someone comes to Baroda and gives you a time for say for example only 1 day, and he tells you that within a 1 day I need to know the flavor of Baroda or cultural different places of Baroda. So you have the limited time ability. So you have to choose different spots of Baroda, and accordingly you should be able to give the picture how Baroda looks and what is the culture of Baroda. So depending on our time availability, we choose how many number of simulation we can go, how many number of points we can choose. Based on that, your design is do the out of it. This plot is nothing but meta model or surrogate or response curve. Now, this response curves, what is the outcome? Final outcome. Final outcome is nothing but the sensitivity analysis, nested axis plot, and optimization study. See, optimization study is like, suppose out of 10 variables, you know which are the variables is going to give you maximum efficiency. Say for example, 2 variables are directly increasing or decreasing your efficiency, whereas the rest of the variables are not giving you any output. There is no sudden change with the help of the other variables. So what we'll do is we'll take the other two variables and we'll proceed for the optimization study. Now, in the optimization study, say for example, you come up with the optimizations and then you think that, okay, you design a metal sheet and that metal sheet is around, you're saying that minimum thickness of that metal sheet is 12.8 mm and it can bear a load of 100 Newton. So you go to a nearby workshop and you see that, okay, the available work sheet, a metal sheet is available is either 12 mm or this 14 mm. You don't have 12.8 mm. So that means it is not feasible, right? So most of the experimental work or most of the companies is working, they source their material. 60% of their materials are being sourced. So you cannot say that, okay, this much amount of material you can use, this thickness, this dimension, then only you will get that optimized result. Nobody is looking into it. Everyone is concentrated on which parameters you are going to minimize or which parameters you are going to change, then only you are getting close to your best efficiency. That's what we are looking into it. This is the first thing which you can get out of this response curve or meta model. Other thing is that sensitivity analysis. See, this is the sensitivity analysis that likewise I've told you, like out of 10 parameters, we are saying that only 3 parameters are affecting, the rest of the parameters are not affecting. So we'll choose those parameters and proceed further. Correct. A simple example which I can give you is that just like Uber and Ola, they are working. They have done their algorithm in such a way such that they are able to maximize their pickup and reduce the number of reduce the time. So that's how they operate. Say for example, at certain part of your place, you will not be able to get the Ola or Uber within a fraction of time. Whereas in the is a busy place, you will get the maximum number of pickups. Within a short span of time, you will be able to get your car. So this is how the overview where you can use your meta model and how things we can proceed further. Correct. So, so this is the overview of design of experiment. How do we learn and improve? And this can be classified or can be divided into 3 sections. Observing significant events. So when I say observing significant events, it means that we normally design for a failure or to maximize our efficiency. These are the 2 things which we look into it, right? Next is the previous knowledge. Now, whatever the data. Now, these days we deal with the data. So if your previous your company or your research group has got a lot of data available with them, they are working on the same directions, then it's a helpful to you. Then you know where to go. So these are the parameters will be available, will be affecting your efficiency or something which you are looking into it. So the previous knowledge is essential. Simultaneously, say for example, you come up with a prototype of a model and you establish your new startup, and you don't have that amount of data with you. So in that case, what we'll do? You have to do the simulation of events, simulation of number of things. So these days, even crash testing or wind tunnel testings, they don't do lots of experiment. They do the simulation of events, and then finally they come to a conclusion. Okay, this parameters are affecting. Let's build this model and then test it. And this is how it's been done. A famous quote which I have written here is that to find out what happens to a system, you have to interfere with it. You have to interfere with it, not passively observe it. You cannot wait for like around 100 years, 10 years to observe how things are affecting. You have to change the certain parameters and see how these parameters are influencing your outcome. So this is the overview of DOE. Next, we normally when we do an experiment, we observe whatever the results we have got and conclude. Now, if it may happen that you are not able to get the desired results, then what do? You need to change some parameters and get the desired results. So what we do, we tweak inputs to get what we want. So this is the this boils down to this graph. Process is nothing but your system. You have set parameters, that means fixed input, that means boundary condition which is given to you. A key controlling parameters which are independent variables which are influencing your system, and the output variables are the dependent, the function which you are looking into it. This is the main thing you are looking into it. And this is a key noise parameters. Now what I mean by key noise parameters, designing a wind turbine. Now the turbine on a certain condition within a certain range, that wind turbine is coupled with a motor and that has got an RPM. Now you don't have a control over wind speed. It can be a 10 meter per second here, this today, maybe different some other day. So that is the noise. That means noise is nothing but the parameters which are not in your control. So any experiment is to determine the output which you are going to get in terms of a independent variables, key control parameter, fixed input. So this is the total thing which we are looking into it. Finally, whatever the results you are predicting, the function, whatever the function you have got and have from the experiment or CFD must match. There should not be any gap between meta model prediction and the experiment or CFD. If this is straight lines, a black straight line, that means your meta model is accurately predicting whatever the experiment is predicting. So then a question, you cannot experiment limited number of experiments or limited number of simulations. But whatsoever is like, say for example, if I say 10 to 2, I can say 10 to 6, 8, 2. But what in between? So the response curve or meta model. But that result should be aligned with your experiment or CFD. Now there are certain criteria of matching those things and developing your algorithm, training your algorithm to match accurately with the experiment or CFD. This is nothing but kind of AI where you treat your data, treat your algorithm, improvise your algorithm, treat it to get your. Coming to the design of experiments, so there are design of experiments it's been divided into certain sections like CCD, central composite design, box designs, optimal space filling, custom space filling, space grid initialization, Latin hypercube, sampling designs. So these are six criteria are there on which you can take your samples. Say for example, when an engineer does a soil testing, a soil from the four corners of the land and at the center, and then they mix it and then they do the experiment repeated number of times, and then finally they come up, okay, this is the soil testing. This is how you take your samples. Likewise, taking as plotting a points in a design space, it's up to you how you choose. So there are certain way of taking those points. I'm not going in details. You can these are open literature which you be able to get it. This is a CCD, central composite design, where in the design space, suppose this is your design space, you are taking 45-degree angles, number of points. Say for example, your midpoint is this one, then you can choose a point here, here, here. Likewise, you can able to generate 2 into n number of points if you go for CCD. So likewise, box Latin hypercube sampling designs are there. So where you're randomly placing your points and getting the favorable results. So there are optimal space in the custom. You can customize also parameters like you wanted to plot a point here, 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 and likewise you can do it. So I'm not getting into it. I'll show you the application of it because this thing here it's available. So coming to a response curve, as I told you, response curve is nothing but getting your FFX. How best fit is, it's a question. So again, there are certain ways of getting a response curve or meta model. So these are the 6 response curve surface technique. One is the genetic aggregation, the other one is standard response surface. Standard response surface is nothing but second order polynomial, where you f of x will be a function of second order, you'll get a coefficients. Now you fit your data, experimental data or CFD data into it and find out the coefficient. And thus you can predict how the response curve is behaving. Kriging is also a third order polynomial functions. Non-parametric regressions, I'll show you. So this is your standard full second order polynomial where you're using a polynomial, your output will be a function of your inputs in terms of a polynomial of second order. And you are with the help of the data which you got, you will be able to find out what is the coefficient in it. And thus you fit the curve in it. See, the curve which you have fitted here, the blue line, and the points, the black points are nothing but your experimental results. So there are some mismatch. See, there are some errors. Your response curve is saying that this should be the value, where your experimental results are showing this amount of value. So that means you are not able to predict accurate results. So you have to train your model. You have to train your algorithm. You have to fit the data to it and improvise your algorithm so that accurate reading you will be able to fetch. Likewise, in Kriging, what happens is that you in one point is that in second order polynomial you are not able to capture your local variations, whereas in Kriging you are able to capture your local variations also. So this is the difference between a Kriging and your second order polynomial. So non-parametric regression is nothing but your within a response surface you will be taking a tolerance level. That blue dotted lines indicates the tolerance line within which your data will be there. So the accurate results or your experimental results is denoted by the red lines, and your dotted lines are the data which you are predicting. So this will give you within a certain range whatever the tolerance you are mentioning. So say for example 3%. So that within the 3% range it will give you the results. So neural network is nothing but the same thing which I mean just like our brain, how our brain functions. So suppose you have three input parameters. Now your output is dependent on your input, but those three input parameters has got certain weightage. Say for example, one may get 20% weightage, other may get 40%, other get 40% weightage, or it can be changed 30, 40. So depending on the weightage, your neural network you can design. Again, these things are available. You can Google it. I mean, you can find it out in literature. Sponge grid is like it's an adaptive response. You just start with a 10 number of points within your design space or 10 number of simulation, and with the outcome, with your f of x or with your response curve, you see that your response curve is not matching. You increase your number of points so that accurately it matches. So it's like an iterative technique where you start up with a small number of points and then you gradually increase your points to match your results. And then lastly is the genetic aggregation. So genetic aggregation is nothing but your genetic algorithm. It's kind of a genetic algorithm where you couple all the last discussed response techniques and find out the best suitable results or best suitable response surface. It gives you best suitable response surface. So this is how genetic aggregation works. I hope you know what is the genetic algorithm, where you put some certain conditions and you choose your parents. From your parents, you get your chromosomes, and that chromosome testing has been done. You rank it. So accordingly, that genetic aggregation also works on that level also. Since it's not in our scope of our webinar, so I've just indicated what are the different terminologies we have. So coming back to this, like since we are dealing with an model in our day-to-day application, so this is one of the application which I have used, and this is an ejector. Ejector is nothing but a device where your high pressure fluid you can press similarly same advantage have any mechanical device in it. You don't have to give any input power. You are just utilizing your high pressure fluid. That high pressure fluid will be able to expand in the CD nozzle, and thus it will be fluid. So these are all high Mach numbers fluid. I mean, you will be expanding it to 2.5 Mach number or 1.2, depending on your applications. Application to application, it varies. The application of an injector it's need to give a thrust. So these are the application of an ejector. So this is the typical flow physics of an ejector, where what happens is that your POP is nothing but your primary stagnation pressure, the nozzle, and in the nozzle can work as an over expanded nozzle or under expanded or fully expanded. It depends on the primary pressure, your dynamic pressure range between inlet and the outlet. Depending on this, you will get a shock or expansion waves, Mach waves, and thus it will entrain the fluid. Till certain section, there will not be any mixing between the primary fluid and secondary fluid. That length we call it a non-mix length. After a certain time, we will be able to primary. So that is called your non-mixing length. And after that, it will the diffuser. It's just like in wind tunnel, where only thing is that you got a two fluids. You're entraining your secondary fluid, which is at lower pressure, with the help of a high pressure fluid. So I'll show you some experimental results. This is the experimental results which we have done in our lab. This is typically a air ejector where your expansion is taking place and where the Mach number was somewhere around 2.5. This is a typical Schilling image and this is a typical MI scattering image. I'll show the video and then I'll come across. See, once the expansion takes place, primary fluid will expand and it will with this seen here amount of shock which is being generated at the diffuser exit. So in the MI scattering image, that able to point or non-mixing length, or where we are not able to differentiate between primary and secondary. See, at this point, secondary, and they see this is at the diverging section, and direction here. So similar things you can observe in the Schilling image, where number of shocks which you are seeing in the diverging part. So this is a typical experiment. In the experiment, you don't know which parameters is influencing your outcome, right? So this kind of experiment takes a lot of time. So you have to change your every parameter some time, right? So what we normally do is this is like an axisymmetric geometry. So the shock formations, entrainment, and everything will get influenced by the variables, different variables. Now, in my case, what are the variables which we have is we have 7 variables like secondary fluid inlet radius, primary nozzle. This is primary nozzle. This is secondary nozzle. So your primary nozzle, nozzle divergence length. This is primary nozzle exit. Length, diffuser height. So in this axisymmetric model which I have taken, we have designed it for CO2, where your primary mass flow rate we have taken per second. Our stagnation pressure is around 120 bar for the primary pressure inlet. Bar. For somewhere around 100 bar to 89 bar, and we are going to see how the flow. So before that, since there are 7 parameters which is influencing all our the parameters which we are looking into it. We are looking into it compression ratio and entrainment. Entrainment is nothing but your how much mass flow rate is getting in secondary divided by the mass flow rate of your primary. So these are the 2 things which we are looking into it, but it depends on the 7 parameters. So what I've done is I've used this response curve. So I've started with the 144 geometries. Okay, so I've taken out of those 7 parameters, we have correlated it some points, and we have taken 144 number of possibilities. Out of this 144 number of possibilities, we have simulated it for somewhere around 1 month. It took 1 month, and then we got of 144 geometries, and then out of this we have from the results we have treated. We have able to get our meta model. The response curve. Now, getting a response curve is not a big deal, but the point is you are getting a response curve. Now the response curve has to be accurate with your CFD results or experimental results, whatever you have. Now, how to judge it? The basic way of judging it is like a coefficient of determination on cross validation on the learning. Do that. See, say for example, at x equal to 2, your f of x is 10, and from the experimental results, and from x equal to 2, f of x is 11. You are getting it from the response curve. So that means these are not matching, correct? So whatever the points you are getting from the meta model, you just cross check with your CFD result or experimental results. If it is matches, is the criteria. Criteria is R square should be 0.99. If it is 0.99 close enough with your results, you can go with multi-objective evaluation algorithm. Whatever the next step you have looked into it, you have thought about it, you can go with it. Otherwise, you have to add refinement points. You have to increase your number of points. From 144 geometries, you have to increase your number of geometries, increase your number of simulations, till the point when you're increasing number of points is nothing but you giving your enough data inputs to your algorithm and getting a result out of it. So till R square value is e to the power minus 4. So till that points, you have to add your refinement points. Once you get it, you know which parameters are influencing your outcome. So you can use those parameters only and proceed for the further optimization technique. Any optimization technique you can use. Whereas in my case, I have used multi-objective evaluation algorithm, and then finally Pareto front computation and Pareto front results. And then so this is what I was talking about. See, the predictor from the response surface, and this is the CFD. So this is a validation of a meta model to obtain the generation curve which I have plotted. So see, points from the response curve, CFD. And again, I have validated. And if it was a perfect straight line, then I could have told that, okay, 100% my response curve is matching. So my value was close to R square is equal to 0.9987. That means 3% values are not matching with our CFD results or experimental results. That's fair enough. We can, even then if you are not satisfied, you can increase your number of points, simulations or experiment. You can increase number of experiments and you can fit those data again and get the results out of it, response curve out of it. Similarly, for the entropy generations, we have plotted it. So once I have validated our model, I have validated my response curve across with the CFD or experiments. Now I can see which parameters are influencing my final results. Since we have started with the 11 parameters, 7 geometrical parameters, the rest of the 3 parameters are bound parameters, how it is influencing my parameters which I am looking into it, my dependent variables, which are entrainment ratio and compression ratio. So this is the entrainment radius of test section, the radius of test section. So as we see that at certain sections, my entrainment is maximum. As we increase the radius of test sections, my entrainment ratio diminishes. Now, I'm not getting into the physics of it because it will take another webinar to complete it. So at least from this data, I know, okay, fine. Then we, at this test sections, somewhere around 3.1, we are getting the best entrainment. 3.1 test section in my experiment in the optimization part and look into it. So I know which parameters now to tweak. So again, NXP. See, NXP is varying from 0.55 to 0.35. That means it's influencing your NXP is not which I have not shown you. Oh, wait. So this X3 is nothing but your NXP. So it also depends on your nozzle. From nozzle till your test section. This is your test section. between those two will influence your outcome. So likewise, it's showing that your NXP is also influencing. So similarly, we have plotted primary temperature and secondary temperature against entrainment ratio, which is seeing that with increase in primary temperature and stagnation temperature, see TOS 320, that means this is the line, you're decreasing your secondary temperature inlet and you're increasing your primary temperature inlet and you're getting maximum entrainment. So this is also one of the parameters which is influencing. Now, again, third parameters which we have seen is the length of the test sections. As we increase the length of test section, your entrainment is decreasing. So see that the range which I'm talking about, it's 0.64 to 0.46, it's a huge difference. Whereas your length of the diverging duct, okay, so this is not influencing anything. I mean, your entrainment is not getting influenced by the length of diverging duct. Even though it's showing an U curve to you, but the point is, see the variation. It is somewhere around 0.31, where is 0.27. We can easily neglect that length of the diverging duct. We can take a constant there. We can take any value and randomly we can change other parameters. So this is the outcome actually. Now we know which parameters to tweak, which parameters not to tweak. So again, nozzle divergence line. See the variations. Look at the variation. It's 0.575 to 0.54. So nozzle divergence, we see that with increasing nozzle divergence length, your entrainment is decreasing. Similarly, with your secondary nozzle, you can see that how the variation is taking place. But look at the variation range. It's 0.534 to 0.541. So for that amount of range, we will neglect this radius of secondary nozzle. We'll take some constant there, 3 mm or 4 mm, and we'll design accordingly the rest of the parameters. So this is the final graph. The which we were talking about, we have plotted it in the single entrainment ratio which you are getting, and this is the normalized values of the input parameters. The input parameters are nothing but these are the parameters like length of the test section, length of the diverging duct, radius of test section, radius of nozzle exit point, likewise several parameters which we have discussed earlier. Now as you have seen that you can easily find out which parameters to look into it. Like see this is what radius of test section. So this is one of the influencing parameter on your outcome. Similarly, this dash line, which is your radius of nozzle. So you can easily find out which parameters to concentrate. Based on that, you can proceed further for optimizations. Otherwise, what will happen is that in your optimization, it will take a lot of amount of time. You wanted to do your experiments with that amount of only those parameters you can tweak in your experiment, and you can get the results. So likewise, in entropy generation also, we have seen which parameters is influencing. It's like inlet pressure. Obviously, your inlet pressure will influence your entropy generation. As we increase inlet pressure, stagnation pressure, your entropy generation is increasing. So I'm not going through it in details. I'll just influencing the generation. We can see easily these two lines. 4 points. I mean, four independent variables. One is radius of test section. Okay. This line is what? This line is length of the test section. Okay. What is this line? This line is our secondary stagnation temperature. So I know my entropy generation is getting influenced only with the 4 variables. So I can stick with the 4 variables, and rest of the variables I can just ignore them and proceed for next further optimizations or experimental thing. And finally, we started with an 11 points, and then we jotted down to 4 points or 5 points. Based on those points, done in optimizations, you can use any optimization technique, whichever is feasible to you. Multi-object evolution algorithm, NSGA2. Where I have maximized entrainment ratio and maximized generation. Now the question is, if you wanted to entrainment and compression are inversely proportional. Once you wanted to increase your compression ratio, entrainment ratio will decrease. So and that's why we took those parameters and do the optimization and plotted the Pareto graph. Now you can see that those in this cluster of points, there are no single points is available. That means in this part, you're not able to get your feasible results. Either you are not able to maximize your entrainment or maximize your compression ratio. That means there are some problem in this range. Physics is not as per what you wanted to achieve. So in that case, so this kind of work will minimize your. I mean, you can minimize your time and you can maximize your outcome to concentrate. Now I know. See, the cluster of points is happening here. So I know, okay, find out the geometry at these points. I already have those geometries. So I'll took those geometries and I'll do the experimental stuff. So I'll be able to reduce my time. Otherwise, I don't know which way to go on. I had an open space. I would have done. I would have taken all the points and then finally do the experiment and then finally come to a conclusion. Or similarly, I don't know how to do as. I mean, I know CFD. Okay, fine. Then take n number of points and do it. Say, doing a computational task is also an expensive. You cannot go on for like uh, 2 years, 3 years doing a computational study and then finally finding out a conclusion out of it. So you have to reduce it. So coming to a conclusion is that with the getting a Pareto getting a response curve or meta model with the use of a meta model, you will be able to know where to concentrate or which parameters is influencing your entrainment or compression ratio. So likewise, we have chosen the based on our primary pressure and stagnation temperature. Based on our input condition, we have used our energy, momentum, mass balance equations, and we did an analytical study, and then we have plotted those. I mean, we have going for that what is going to be my entrainment ratio, and based on our optimized result, we have got certain parameters. On those parameters, what will be my entrainment ratios and compression ratio. So for the literature, from the literature, whatever the results or whatever the analytical study we have done, with this same, with these parameters, with these geometrical parameters, we will be able to get a total entropy generation of this much and entrainment ratio 0.27 and 1.16. But with the help of a response curve, then from that Pareto from you choose any point. Out of that, we are able to get the entrainment ratio 0.8, 1.16 of the compression ratio. See, this much amount of increase of entrainment ratio is happening just because you are able to optimize it with the help of a response curve and then proceed to the parameterization. So this is how things you can use it, your application of a response curve or meta model into it. So thank you. That's all from my side. If you have any questions, we can take.
Okay, thank you, Paul sir. This is a very informative session. We have received some question. Can we take that?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. One question that you have discussed about the like optimization technique. Support vector method for the multivariable performance measures.
See, again, I have to what problem you are looking into it. So depending on the sir problem, whatever the variables he is looking into it, what it can be any optimization technique you can use, NSDA2 or multi-objective. It depends on what you are looking into it. So I think that's I mean I'm not going in details like which technique will be best suited. This is what I can say.
Okay. Got the answer of his first question. Actually, yes. One more question.
Yeah.
That yeah, which one of the best surface response method is for?
Third is that genetic aggregations is coming up with the good results. It's a cluster of like 6 response surface. So it took the best results out of all those circuits, all those response curve. So I hope genetic aggregation will give you best results. The noise which is created from the data will get eliminated with the help of genetic aggregations. And still, kriging will give you best results. But still, I feel you can go with genetic aggregations because I personally use genetic aggregations and I go the results quite promising. Hello.
Okay. Thank you. Sir, this second question. One very relevant question that Deman sir under facility do one to do such type of work in our campus, like PU campus.
See, the we require is first of all the facility which existing facility which we have in our lab is LHSR is like CO2 ejector. For that, like we have to got a cylinders which can carry that amount of pressure. You have high speed camera which can see the test time is very low. See 120 bar mass flow rate is 0.35 kg per second, and test time will be roughly around 3 seconds. So whatever the results which I have shown you the video, which it was around 2 second, I guess, yeah, 2.5 second. So within that 2.5 second, you will be able to detect where the high. So Phantom FPS, I think it's around 12,000. Somewhere around 110k US dollar it's cost us, and then you need a rest of the sensors like pressure sensor, temperature sensors, which will be where the response time should be very low, since it had to deal with around test time is 2 seconds or 3 seconds, so you have to then ability and memory. I mean, after all, you have, but doing an experiment it takes a lot of money,
Okay, thank you, sir. And I have one more question, but before that, if anyone having any other question, just post it at my WhatsApp. Number is 96249 You can post that question, and I will forward that question to our expert. Okay, one more question I have got from the student, that is Samihan Lohit. He's a transfer student from SBNIT Surat, and he's a semester student. And his question is, what if we optimize using the point that create a differentiable result in 3D space? And if the mesh is showing specific different on the quantity, can we increase or decrease the number of information gathering point locally? Rather than
no, I am not able to understand the question. Is it like he is talking about getting the results which you are getting? Like, can you just repeat the question again?
Yeah, just a minute. This question is, what if using the point that creates a space,
Your voice is breaking.
and yeah,
Your voice
one
is
minute.
breaking.
Yeah, 1 minute. Am I audible now clearly?
Yeah, yes.
So let me repeat the question. His question is that what if we optimize using the point that creates a differentiable result in 3D space? And just let me read out the whole question he has asked. Maybe that will be better. Yeah. And if the mesh is showing specific different on the quantity, can we increase or decrease the number of information gathering points locally?
See,
Okay.
the question, I think he asked that increasing the mesh and getting the results, which is completely irrelevant. I think you first of all you have to do the grid independent study, right? Once you are done with your grid independent study, then how come your mesh will affect your results? It won't change, right? So once you are done with your grid independent study, then only you can proceed for the meta model or response curve or optimizations part or CFD simulations part. Before that, you cannot proceed, right? Your mesh cannot influence any other parameters. Once it's influenced, that means you are not getting results accurately. That means your numerical error is there in your mesh. So you have to reduce it. So one way of reducing it is get a proper mesh, do the grid independent test, and then proceed further.
I think his question is something related to abrasive nozzle ensemble. Okay, I hope Samhan has got the answer. And if he found if he look for the further details, he can further extend that question. Okay, one question from my side, Paul sir. That the ejector that you have shown, in that one we may got some shock waves. My question is that what range of Mach number that one can get in the ejector if he is going to expand that AR organs.
Uh, for air case, you can normally go for like Mach number 5, 6, depending on your experimental study. How much Mach number will you be able to design your experimental setup? As per I know, I mean, I have came across or I have seen experiments in our lab. We have gone till Mach number 3, and whereas for different fluids, like air is a lighter fluid. I mean, CO2, we cannot go beyond. It will not influence the results which we are looking. We have seen that in CD nozzle, your shock is happening within the nozzle itself. It's not happening outside the nozzle. If it is a disadvantage for us. So which so and as for your question is depending on your application, maximum range you are looking into it. Ultimately, you want an nozzle to suck the fluid, secondary fluid inside the ejector.
Okay. And, okay. One more question I just want helpful to our fifth semester student. Sona sir, Paul sir. Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Just give me 1 minute. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, we have seen that there are certain locations where we got the higher range of entropy generation. My question is that try to decrease the entropy generation, or should we avoid that particular design parameters and we look for the another parameters to like avoid that particular maximum entropy generation?
Yeah, the question is ejector will perform well only when say for example I am designing an ejector where I want your compression ratio to be high. That means our secondary fluid is coming at 80 bar. I want the secondary fluid to get out at the exit at somewhere around 95 bar or 100 bar. So that means for that purpose I need a shock, because only the shock will increase my pressure range, right? After mixing, if there is a shock, then only it's a favorable, because after pressure is going to increase. So the main source of generation of entropy will be in the ejector is mixing, and other one is a shock. So once you wanted to diminish your entropy generation, then maybe your compression ratio will be hampered. So then again, you have to see which side you're looking into it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Sir, I hope informative. Let me just. Yeah, here we come to the end of the session. I, Jiten Chauhan, on the behalf of Mechanical Engineering Department of PIT, Parul University, Vadodara. Thanks to the speaker, Mr. Sanjay Paul, faculty, and everyone related to this event webinar, and our HOD of valuable support and time, and for allowing me to conduct this webinar. I also extend my thanks to our principal sir, and thank you all, and hoping the same response for the future webinars. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.